in the name of personal injury law.
Semi-truck accidents are sudden and traumatic, and people are very seriously injured oftentimes. They need to learn how to face a new life with their injuries, but they also need to know how to pursue their legal rights. Today we have Steve Sinas of the Sinas Law Firm to talk to us about how to pursue a semi-truck accident case.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. So, it's great that you're here. And what are the first steps to handling a semi-truck accident case when it comes into your firm?
Well, whatever the situation is, we want to take action. And the action we take can be affected based on how long it's been since the crash when the person comes into our firm. If someone contacts our firm and has just been injured in a semi-truck accident, we'll want to get out to the scene as soon as we can to collect as much evidence as we can. There are important things about the roadway to look at, whether there's skid marks. You can determine perhaps where the point of impact was between the two vehicles, so you can learn a lot about the crash by getting out to the scene. But if several weeks have gone by, several months, and the person's coming in finally looking for a lawyer, going to the scene doesn't tell us that much. So then we have to request as much as we can from local police departments that investigated the crash, get as much information that might be out there through other insurance companies or maybe the trucking company that investigated the crash, because that's the thing. These trucking companies get out there immediately, right?
Right, they have to.
They have to, and they send their people before anyone else can get there. So we try our best to get as much information as we can, but the sooner somebody retains us, the more we can gather in terms of evidence for them. So that's really important. And then we go on through an analysis trying to determine what parties might be at fault. And what people should understand is that when you have a semi-truck accident, you have the driver who maybe was driving negligently. That driver can be held liable, but their employer can be held liable. The owner of the semi-truck can be held liable. Sometimes they're different owners of the truck and the trailer, so you have to examine that relationship. There might be leasing agreements on the truck. Some entity might own the truck and lease it to another entity. There could even be theories to hold shippers liable who loaded up the truck, depending on the nature of the crash. So there's a lot that goes into that preliminary analysis, determining which party is at fault. And then once we determine what parties are at fault, what individuals are at fault, we put them on notice by sending them letters explaining that we represent the person and asking them to preserve all evidence.
So help me understand, is it, you act really quickly in these cases to do your investigation. Is that more important in a semi-truck case than it would be for any other kind of auto accident?
You always want to be diligent as an attorney, but there are things about a semi-truck case where it requires even more diligence, or it makes it even more important to be diligent. First of all, these cases often, as you remarked, involve serious injury. So you have a lot riding on these cases, and you need to get out there and make sure that you can make a difference for your clients. And then you also have an aggressive opponent on the other side. These trucking companies and their insurance companies, which is really the main entity that defends against the case, they are aggressive and they want to find any information they can to reduce their liability. And so we have to make sure that we work up our cases diligently so we figure out who we can pursue a case against and then be ready to pursue that case, because we know that their attorneys are going to be ready to go when they get their job.
So does the Michigan NoFault Law apply to a semi-truck accident case, or are there other laws that also apply in this context?
So the Michigan NoFault Law has a huge impact on semi-truck accident cases here in Michigan. We did a whole other episode about all the ways that the Michigan NoFault Law plays in these cases. So the answer to your question is the Michigan NoFault Law definitely applies to these cases, but also there are many other laws that can apply. There is the federal motor carrier regulations that have been adopted by the state of Michigan that set forth all the rules and regulations that truck drivers have to operate by. There are common law theories of liability that can come from case law and other principles that are enforced under Michigan law. And so when you look at a truck accident case, you have to factor in the Michigan NoFault Law. You have to factor in the trucking regulations. There are other safety standards that can apply. So they're a multifaceted case that requires a lot of legal analysis up front so that the case is worked up in the most optimized way and with the best strategy.
So do you, as the attorney representing the injured plaintiff, need to file a negligence suit right away as well?
You sometimes feel the need as an attorney to file a lawsuit right away against the at-fault parties, but you don't have to. You have 3 years as the statute of limitations that typically applies to these cases to bring legal action. And there are reasons to file a lawsuit right away if you're not getting all the information you need from the at-fault parties, they're not complying with your requests. You need to have subpoena power through a lawsuit. So there are times where we file right away, but there are also times where it's in the client's best interest to wait to file a lawsuit. Maybe the client's still treating for their injuries. You don't quite know the nature and extent of their injuries yet. Maybe you have good faith communications going on with the insurance companies involved who want to settle the case, so you don't want to just jump into a lawsuit. Maybe your client just doesn't want to deal with litigation right away because they're injured and they just don't want to be burdened with it. So we never apply a hard and fast rule. We look at each case based on its own facts and circumstances and then file the lawsuit, and you just have to do it within 3 years as the typical rule.
And where do you have to go file that negligence suit? Is it the same place as the PIP case?
That's another thing that we have to think through. It's called venue, the venue selection. And venue is the word to describe the courts that you can choose from to file a lawsuit. And oftentimes it can be the county where the crash occurred. You have to file in that circuit court of that county. But because trucking companies operate in various counties and the way the venue rules work, you may be able to file that lawsuit in various different counties. And so another strategic thing that we have to work up and think through is where would we file the lawsuit once we file it? And venue can be a really important decision. It affects what juries you're going to have in a case, the judge that you have in the case. So you have to think through those things as an attorney for sure.
So once a lawsuit has been filed, can you tell us a little bit about what happens in the case after that?
So some people think that when you file a lawsuit, you're going to court. What's really happening is that you're filing paperwork with a court that opens up a file, puts the case on its docket, and then has the parties through their attorneys agree to a timeline through which the case is handled. There are deadlines to exchange witnesses, deadlines to conduct depositions, which is questioning people under oath to find out what they might say at trial. There are deadlines to exchange other discovery requests, and also there are rights that defense has to have our clients evaluated. So all these things have to be worked into a timeline, but the case moves on. It can be aggressively defended by the attorneys for the trucking companies, but it's a long process. And so we just tell our clients, you have to be tough and fight your way through it. But if you endure the process, which can usually be pretty bearable, throughout that process, the case may settle sometime before trial. And if not, then you have a trial about a year down the road. Okay,
so Steve, tell us what the key is for an injured person to have a successful result in their semi-truck accident case.
They need to hire an attorney they feel comfortable with, who's skilled and knowledgeable with all aspects of the law. They need to stick to the plan with their attorney, and they need to be credible and tell a genuine story about how their injuries have affected their life. And if they do all that, they'll get the best result for themselves.
Okay, thank you for your help today.
Thank you.
In the Name of Personal Injury Law is brought to you by the Sinas Law Firm.